Hey everybody, Andy here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on my experience with the Vaio Z Canvas. You can see I've got it running 3D Mark right now, rounding out the entire welcome battery of testing, and I've already done this, but this is with maximum performance on the Iris 5200 integrated Intel graphics solution that's part of the Haswell quad-core i7 that this beast packs, and that's really its calling card, as well as the fact that it has one of the best displays you're going to find on any computer, let alone tablet, on the market right now, and then doesn't neglect when it comes to having full functionality on the ports on the left-hand side of this machine. Also, any concern about throttling, because this is a 2.5-pound roughly tablet that has a quad-core Intel i7 under the hood, again, even though it is Haswell and not Skylake, really can be put to bed. You should hear the 3 fans right now all along the top here cooling the system, so throttling, at least thus far in my short time with it, has not been an issue. I've done some light gaming, still haven't taken on heavier games. Of course, I do plan to do UHD editing on here, as well as rendering, and work with Photoshop with 42 megapixel raw stills from my A7R Mark II. But in terms of overall performance, there's really nothing else like the Vaio Z Canvas right now. Even the brand new offerings from Microsoft, both in the Surface Pro 4 as well as the Surface Book, really can't approach who this machine is targeting simply because of the processing power. If that's what you're after, then nothing else is like this machine. So in terms of pricing, entry level $2,200 US, that gets you the 8 gig 256 gigabyte model. Everything else is identical in terms of the aesthetic. The display, that 12.3-inch 2560 by 1704 IPS display that covers 95% of the color gamut. So if you're looking for color accuracy, this is a best-in-class device. Then you also get that full-size keyboard, which actually is better than I had originally anticipated. It does charge via micro USB. You can see the port there up at the top, or directly from the machine. But considering the machine's battery life, you're probably going to want to charge this separately if you're trying to preserve battery life. But no disconnections, easy on-off switch to deal with right there. You can also turn off the trackpad. Overall experience is very good. I, again, have to say, I didn't expect much because of the build on here, it being kind of flexible, but that actually plays in its favor. Also, the keys themselves separated and spaced very nicely, comfortable to use, something I can't really say about the brand new Surface Book. But that's a video for another day, really a comparison. Trackpad works really well, maybe not as polished again as the brand new Surface Book, but very close, if not a wash, in my opinion. Again, the star of the show here is the display you're getting, that 3:2 aspect ratio, high-res IPS, incredibly vibrant and accurate display, combined with the fact that you're not giving up anything when it comes to functionality, because along the left side of this bezel, you have every port that you could possibly want. And I'll give you a quick look. You may hear the fans running here, and that's because, after all, as I mentioned, we are running 3D Mark, and as a result, this machine is cooling itself. So now you get an idea of how loud it gets when it's maxed out. But you can see we've got a Ethernet port right here, something that traditionally would not be found on a tablet in this class running Windows 10 Pro. HDMI out that is 4K capable, UHD capable, as is the display port, so you can actually run 2 UHD displays from this device. Full-size SD card slot right there, which I have a 512 gig card in, and then 2 USB 3.0 ports, of course one of them being charge capable, and then a headphone and microphone jack, dual duty jack right there at the top left side. All ventilation around the top, as I mentioned before. That kickstand, which some people have complained about because they keep trying to close it with their hand rather than using a surface as it's meant to be closed, because that's the whole purpose of this kickstand design, is that you're going to be drawing on the screen. After all, you do have a stylus included. Really N-Trig based, even though Vaio is calling this Sony technology. That's because previous tablets from Sony already had in their library patents associated with N-Trig, which is now owned by Microsoft. So you're going to get a very similar experience to what you'll get with the Surface Pro 4 or Surface Book, arguably maybe even a little bit better, depending on your preference and also how you feel the screen actually handles drawing or painting for that matter. Now, when it comes to changing the viewing angle, you can just continue to bring this all the way down to a flat point. That will close the stand, as I mentioned before. You can see it's almost completely closed right now, and it's very easy to open once you actually get leverage. You see, we've got this much space here, and that's all you need. Pops open. I actually got the monopod there in the mix, but that's it. And then it all comes down to just putting it in the position you actually desire. Now, I've mentioned the processor. I've mentioned the overall pricing, $2,200 to get in the door, $2,600 for the model we're looking at here, which has 16 gigs of RAM and also offers a 512 gig PCI Express drive rather than the solid state drive that comes in the entry-level model, and that is a much faster drive. You'll also find that drive ×2 in the 1 terabyte configuration. So this is identical to the 1 terabyte config outside of the fact, of course, that it only has 512 gigs of RAM. Both of them have 16 gigs of, storage. Both have 16 gigs of RAM. So if you're looking for, in my opinion, the best overall performer and value, believe it or not, even in this price range for a luxury item, in my opinion, such as this, you're looking at it here. The mid-tier model is where it's at. I don't see the premium for the 1 terabyte to be worthwhile, even though none of these specifications are modifiable or upgradable. So whatever you're purchasing is what you're going to live with through the lifespan of your device. Keep that in mind. But that's the only reason I wouldn't suggest going with the entry-level $2,200 machine, is simply because it does not have, obviously, the 16 gigs of RAM or that PCI Express drive, which are things you want to complement this incredibly powerful i7 that is the same across all three builds. So that's one thing I'll point out. When it comes to the keyboard, as I mentioned before, that RF proprietary connection is solid as a rock. I've noticed no disconnects whatsoever, and even though I don't understand, I understand that it can charge magnetically here, and as we get our results, I'll come back to them in a second, but I just want to show you quickly. Essentially, the design is as follows. You take the keyboard, Vaio logo up, and it just snaps on. And just like that, you'll see a amber light here. It is now charging the keyboard. It's topping it off. Anytime you do this, it'll do that. And really, I think it's only suggested when you are actually on wire, because as I mentioned before, this machine, the only weakness it has, in my experience so far, is battery life. And the last thing you want to do is give up some of the juice that's on board to the keyboard. And the keyboard does have its own dedicated charging port, so that does solve that to a degree. On the right-hand side of the machine, and everything, of course, is off now, we have our power button and volume rocker. Build quality here is great. We also have a pen holder, which I'll be showing you through the course of this video, and that is it. Very industrial in overall design. I just really like what Vaio did with this. Whether you think it's an incarnation of the Tap or not is kind of irrelevant. It's just a great piece of hardware. We've got this magnesium body, a fantastic display, basically a 1 megapixel camera on the front, which I can't explain to you for the life of me why they went with a 0.99 megapixel front-facing camera on such an expensive machine, but really not my biggest concern. We've got an 8 megapixel camera on the back right here, and then we have two buttons at the top of the machine. The right one is dedicated to turning off all finger input, so you don't have to worry about palm rejection. This is for those of you that are looking to work strictly with your pen. You may have also noticed on the pen I've got this rubber cover, which is completely optional. It's included. It's all a matter of whether or not you want to use it. Now let me power this back up. And what I want to do is show you those results right now. I also want to show you just how fast that PCI Express drive is by doing a quick reboot. But here you can see some of the results. Now, I already noticed in previous testing that this didn't pick up the actual i7 Haswell chip that's in there. It's coming up as processor not recognized. So take these results with a grain of salt, no question about it. What you can expect, at least when it comes to gaming with the Iris 5200, is that you can play pretty much, I would say, just about any title modern game out there, but you're going to be doing so obviously in a lower resolution than what you have standard here. Again, that 2560 by 1704. Think more along the lines of 720p, which is 768 on a machine like this, 1366 by 768. And I probably will do a gaming demo for those of you that are interested, even though that isn't what this machine is targeted at. It's still far more capable than the average machine in its class. So you can game on this, whether we're talking about GTA or possibly even Metal Gear. I'll be testing that as well. And then lighter games like Steam games like CSGO, it's going to play with ease. You may have to play with settings, of course. I already mentioned resolution and sticking to mid to low settings for overall graphics, but just the fact that something like this can run those games is pretty amazing. So 3D Mark scores aside, I also wanted you to get an idea of how loud this machine gets, because now when you're in traditional browsing, low maintenance stuff, it does not get loud. So even though it has the capability to cool off, and by the way, it does get hot in the appropriate place, which is where the CPU is, top backside of the machine, I believe, at least from where the heat is coming from. That's as loud as things are going to get, but when you're doing traditional tasks like computing, you're not going to see any of that action. Let me go ahead and take us out of here for 1 second. And again, you can just see how brilliant this display is. I'm going to show you some video that I have on this 512 gig card and give you an idea of at least what to expect there. So let's go ahead and check out something here. And this is 4K footage shot with the A7R Mark II. I'm looking for something good. Let's see what we've got here. Well, that's not what I want to show you, but I will find it. And really what I found is that anything I've thrown at this so far, it's done a great job with. Now, I keep mentioning battery life is the Achilles, and that's because it is. You're talking about anywhere from 4 to 5 hours of battery life, and that's with brightness cranked down. Right now, we're at 100% brightness because we are running, as I mentioned, everything maxed out, highest performance capability, and we are even plugged in. By standard settings out of the box, Microsoft Signature, the balanced power profile puts you at 40% and pretty much tweaks everything down to get you to that 4 to 5 hour battery life. So Vaio's claim of 7 hours, not happening. But we all pretty much knew that to begin with. Realistically, we're talking more around 4 hours, especially if you try to take everything to the max. In fact, you could probably kill this machine in 3 hours if you really pushed it. But again, you won't find anything like this when it comes to the sheer processing power. I mean, this is a desktop replacement that is 2.5 pounds, only over 3 when you throw on the magnetic RF keyboard. So that's really amazing. And I at first didn't like the separate keyboard design. I'm pointing to it over there off screen, off camera. But now I see the utility. I mean, I'm not an artist, even though this machine is targeting artists. It's content creators in general. And I can see exactly why they would want the keyboard out of the way so they could work both simultaneously with the pen on screen and with the keyboard out of the way, essentially, completely. And I do think the range of motion on the stand is superior to the Surface Pro line when it comes to artistry. It at least would appear to me, working on something like this, a desk, because you can hit any angle perfectly and there's absolutely no give. And that's because as soon as you start to bring this up, the tension spring there just brings the Vaio right back up to its upright position. So it's literally all a matter of being as precise as you could possibly want rather than having the little bit of give and wobble. And I'm not knocking the Surface Pro 3 or now 4 kickstand, best in the business until, I worked with something like this. But this is not going to be usable on a lap if that wasn't obvious already. Now back to me finding that video. Here's a good example. Make that full screen for you. And I mean, it's just a gorgeous display. You cannot go wrong with this machine if you understand exactly why you're picking it up. If you're aware that the battery life is not its strength. It's all about power, performance, and getting as much as you possibly can into the smallest form factor out there, then you're going to be very happy. On the other hand, if you're looking for longevity when it comes to battery life, if you're looking for, basically you don't need the quad-core processor, which, by the way, the majority of users do not require that because much of their software can't even utilize a quad-core processor. So these are things you have to take into account. I have a lot of people saying to me in the comments that the Surface Book is a more powerful machine. That's absolutely false, even with the Skylake Gen processors. Those are all dual-core chips. They are not going to be able to touch the raw performance this machine has to offer. So if that's what you're actually after, I can tell you right now, you're going to do better here. On the other hand, if your software can't utilize it, then why invest extra money in this when you can get a Surface Pro 4 or even 3 or the Surface Book at $1,500 that will probably take care of everything you need. But in terms of what I've seen this machine do thus far, it pretty much is a dream machine for me outside of its battery life. I also think the keyboard should have been backlit, but far from the end of the world, no question about it. It's not a game breaker because, after all, what I'm really purchasing this machine for is what you're looking at here. Now, that doesn't mean I don't care about a keyboard. It means the keyboard is definitely a secondary accessory. After all, we look at something like the Surface Pro 4, and you're buying the type cover separately, granted not with the Surface Book. But again, the Surface Book to me is more about flash than pure guts. And it does a good job, at least from what I've seen, at delivering exactly that. When we get into dedicated GPU, since it's a giant question mark on the Surface Book and today is not a comparison, I'll tell you right now that I don't expect incredible things because I've been a fan of gaming laptops for a long time, and they all kind of come up short if you're a true desktop gamer. I mean, they're a band-aid in a world of solutions where I know we wish there were more options. So to think whatever NVIDIA, as much as I love NVIDIA, and anyone that follows my channel knows that already, has put together in there, I don't expect it to satiate my needs from a gaming perspective. And if we're talking about offsetting anything the processor can't handle, well, this processor clearly isn't going to have that same issue. So those are things I want to reiterate. Fairly obvious things in my opinion, but things that still many of you are in the dark about, and that's why I'm getting so many comments about why would I even consider this with the Surface Pro 4 being announced or the Surface Book. Let's remember the Surface Book starts at $14.99. The Surface Pro 4 has a ridiculous amount of configuration. For some reason, the Surface Book doesn't, even though the Pro 4 does. Like the only Surface Book with 16 gigs of RAM is the $2,700 build, which is actually more expensive than this. And you're not getting that PCI Express drive that you're getting in here. As far as I know, with Microsoft, the only PCI Express next-gen drive sitting in any of the Surface-based devices is the 1 terabyte Surface Pro 4. When the 1 terabyte comes to the Surface Book, which I'm sure it eventually will, then maybe we'll see the same Samsung drive that's sitting inside this Vaio. But for now, they aren't on even footing when it comes to the actual SSD performance, unless we're going to judge the Vaio solely on the base 256 gig model. But I think you get a pretty good idea that the performance here is stunning from the display. Of course, it's not going to have a problem with UHD. I mean, the Surface Pro 4 won't, but the Surface Pro 4 doesn't have a full-size SD card slot. Also, even if you're working with the Surface Book or the Surface Pro 4, in order to get all of the capability that I have just on the left side of this hybrid, you need to have the Surface Pro, the new dock, which is essentially a breakout station, which I think is great. I wish that Microsoft would have made another docking station, but the reality was they were trying to please customers and make something compatible, which I think is also a really good thing. It looks a lot like the Kensington hub that I've been reviewing using, and it just has a little bit more functionality, and of course is made by Microsoft specifically for the Surface Pro line, and it is backwards compatible, which is very important. But the fact remains, I have everything and more right here on the left side of this device, all built in, so I don't have to bring anything but the charger. And for those of you out there that wish we had some, proprietary special charging mechanism rather than the good old Sony plug, which Vaio still owns the rights to, even though it's not part of Sony. Remember, they have the entire IP, their intellectual property library, all of their patents, everything that Sony developed, created is here still, even though Vaio is a separate company. That means that we're going to see a lot of the things that we did from Sony, even if this is now under the Vaio name. When it comes to typical web browsing, I'll jump onto Chrome, and you can see I've got this split because I have been using the tablet more than the keyboard, and for good reason. As I said before, it works well. I mean, there's no reason. I mean, everything is incredibly fast. That's something I want to stress. And that's something that is to be expected on a machine of this caliber. And from what I saw in store at the Microsoft store of the Surface Pro 4 and of the Surface Book, they just don't seem to have as much speed as this. And that makes sense because they don't have the processing power. As efficient as that Skylake dual-core i7, i5, even the M version can be, it's more about power efficiency, and that's exactly why here we have such bad battery life. This is the opposite. So let's be very clear, this is not a product for the same customer, even though, of course, the customers will overlap because people are going to look at this. If they're spending $2,700 on the 16 gig, 512 gig, with integrated NVIDIA GPU on board Surface Book, then they've got to look at something like this. Right? They owe it to themselves. But when it comes to what they're doing with it, I think even though they both have pen input and they're both tablets in a sense for the Surface Book, since it's really more of a laptop than a tablet, here definitely more of a tablet than a laptop in my opinion. It's a matter of what you prefer. Are you looking for a hybrid slate, or are you looking for the Ultrabook hybrid, which is what the Surface Book really is? So similar in many ways, but again, the CPUs really just render them different beasts altogether. And I can't stress enough that for me, having all of this on the left side, plus a display with real color accuracy for what I do, for all of you, for photography purposes, is an intangible when it comes to picking a device. And up until now, I didn't have an option. So this is a very big leap in the market. Even if it's expensive, I think that Microsoft set a whole new standard with how expensive things can be, even making this Vaio, the mid-range and the base model, look inexpensive for the hardware that they have. Specifically this one because of that 16 gig RAM PCI Express combination, because that's something that in the Microsoft world is going to cost you a considerable amount without having a processor like this that really does round out a desktop replacement type experience in a mobile package. And they're basically exactly the same weight. For those of you that are curious, the Surface Book with its keyboard dock comes out to 3 and a little under a half pounds. This is basically exactly the same with its keyboard. So a little bit of web browsing. I want to do the test I was mentioning before, which is actually rebooting the whole system. I was going to see if I could show you one more piece of video here. I was looking specifically for a sunrise that I'm not getting, which was a great shot. Another great example of how well this display really does. I'm looking for it right now. Maybe I will find it for you. It could be right here. I think it's this. Let's see. Nope. Now you get the idea either way. It just is a knockout. That's what it comes down to. So far, I really haven't found anything to be disappointed with, and I've reiterated that over and over again. I also wanted to show you the boot time, so let's do that right now. Let's restart this sucker. And this will give you a fairly good idea of the performance of that PCI Express 512 gig drive. Fingerprints definitely pick up on here. It gets dirty fast, as does the keyboard, by the way. The keyboard seems to get stained very easily, so if you have a little bit of OCD, find yourself getting bothered by those things, you will find yourself cleaning these things on the regular, but that's nothing new with anything that involves a tablet and your hands. Now, if you're sticking to the stylus, you're not going to have that problem. You saw how quickly that loaded up. In terms of tracking with the stylus, I don't know how well this is going to come across on video. I noticed that this tablet, as compared to the Surface Pro 3 or 4, seems to start tracking earlier. So before I actually get to the screen, it is recognizing the stylus, similarly to what Samsung originally started and everyone kind of followed through with. But once we get on screen, it's exactly where the pen is, lagging a little bit behind it as you actually move from one point of the screen to another until you actually make contact. But that's to be expected because it is actually waiting for contact in order to get a precise drawing. So that is in its nature. Also, the two buttons that are on the pen, for those of you that are curious, are still represented even with that rubber covering, so you still have access to both buttons. And you do have tip replacements, not the customizable tips that Microsoft is offering, but something else I wanted to point out. No eraser function here, but another thing you'll be interested to know is that the Surface Pro pen does work with this too, so if you actually did prefer to use that, since it has the eraser function, you can. Another little tip, and that's specifically the Surface Pro 3 and 4 pen. For those of you wondering, of course, we can't go back to Gen 1 and 2, where N-Trig was not what Microsoft was using. So 1024 levels of pressure sensitivity, an incredible processor, a screen to match, all the RAM you could possibly need to multitask, an abysmal front-facing camera that I have no excuses for, but really I don't care because it's just for video conferencing, in my opinion. So at the bare minimum, more than enough. And then on top of that, you have great build quality. The only downside, as I've said, is that battery life. So a great performer so far. I haven't tried the video rendering yet. Haven't worked with Photoshop. Of course, I'll let you all know how that goes. But I pretty much know what to expect because the processor here is very similar to what was in my Razer Blade that I reviewed this past year. And that was a fantastic machine. And again, to think that a CPU that is actually faster is sitting in this tablet is just mind-boggling. That now I can tote around the power that the Razer Blade had, of course, sans the dedicated GPU that was under the hood, which allowed me to do mid-level gaming. Still could not do high-level gaming to match especially the resolution of the Razer Blade screen. And that's another issue here. 2560 by 1704. What type of GPU do you need? And that's why on the Surface Book with that 3000 by 2000 res, I have to wonder how much gaming prowess it's really going to have. Especially, I mean, not that you need a quad-core chip, by the way, you don't for gaming. And for some 3D modeling stuff, some software doesn't utilize quad-core either, but a lot does as well. So it's really a matter of particularly researching what you're going to be using and whether or not you can actually take advantage of what the Vaio Z Canvas has to offer. If you can, then the battery life should be less important to you. I do wish that Vaio had given us a method of using a battery pack on the go. I think that would have been convenient. I mean, they put a micro USB charger on the keyboard. Why not give us a micro USB port for charging, an input on here for on-the-go purposes? It would have been, in my opinion, a smart thing. I don't know anything about engineering for them to have added it on here. I think it's an already amazing feat what they were able to cram into this. But it would have made a great device even better. Again, it's lightweight, great build, and has everything that a desktop replacement has, but in a tablet that you can actually hold in your hands, which I didn't think I would see in 2015. Other wish list items, that this would have been an AMOLED, but then we wouldn't have had the color accuracy that we're getting from Sony here, which definitely is something that is desired by many, not all, but many users that there really was not an option for out there. So kudos to Vaio on this. So far, I am really impressed, enjoying my experience with this. No complaints from light to heavy computing so far. I have to do more when it comes to gaming. If you're interested in a gaming demo, let me know. I'll throw GTA on here and a couple other titles. Like I said, Metal Gear. You can see I already have Counter-Strike, but we knew that was going to run. That'll run on a Surface Pro 1, let alone 2, 3, or forget about 4 or the Surface Book. but I wanted to see what it was like, frankly, whether or not it was an intuitive experience. And with the keyboard, it is. Since there's less flex than you'd get out of a Surface Pro 3 or 4 type cover. You do get a more realistic laptop experience, and you're not forced into it because it is separate after all. But not being able to use this on your laptop, that's another thing you have to decide if it's an issue for you. For me personally, not a big deal at all. I was more concerned with everything that I mentioned through the course of this video. So I hope that helps those of you trying to decide. By the way, I didn't mention the speakers on this. Output is decent. You're not going to be blown away. I would say it's on par with what you're going to find in the Surface line of products. But a great product from Vaio. Of course, a full review will eventually come once I've spent more time with it. But hopefully this update speaks to most of the areas of interest that all of you are wondering about. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.